Well, Eugene, talk about trials and tribulations. They just keep putting obstacles in front of you.
Yeah, yeah. We got these 4 fights coming up, but there's a lot to get through before we actually step foot in Abu Dhabi. So at the moment they're like shutting all the pathways to Abu Dhabi, so we're like running out of options. So we're just in the process of figuring out what exactly we're going to do, whether it means leaving to America soon or just finding a slightly different route. But yeah, trials and tribulations at the moment.
Yeah, you just received a call just before from the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, UFC preferably want us out of here. The safest place for us to be, even for them, is in Las Vegas, because then we have a clear path back to Abu Dhabi, because they just charter a whole flight, and then that's definitely, that flight's going ahead. They know that. Whereas all the other flights, it's hard to gauge because they get pulled at the last minute, and yeah, so it's just it's a bit of a mission logistically, but we'll get there.
If we drop down to level 1 after Sunday night, will that make it easier for us? Or
I think getting out of New Zealand to the States, I think we can do relatively easily. But that's the long way around for us. Like we want to go straight to Abu Dhabi, which we might not be able to do. We might have to go to the States. I think that's the difficulty, is going some different route to Abu Dhabi, other than to Vegas and then to Abu Dhabi. So, I mean, we'll work it out. I mean, the UFC's logistically are the best at what they do, at putting fighters and planting them and displacing them, so they're pretty good at that.
And I suppose if it is going to happen, having 4 fighters and a bit of a team to go with you, it would be better than if there was just you and one fighter.
Yeah, it's going to be easier for us, but I think that's part and parcel of why there's a little bit of urgency, because 4 fighters on the card that's a third of the card, or that's basically a third of the card. So if something unfortunate should happen and 4 guys get pulled for the card because of they're not able to travel properly, that presents a little bit of a disaster. Not only that, but obviously you've got Kai, who's in top 10 fight, who's one of the headlining fights, and then you've got Israel as well, who's the main event. So I'm figuring it out, but yeah, either we're going to stay a little longer, otherwise we're going to be out of here in the next few days. We'll see. Yeah.
Well, that's not the preferable thing. So, we talk about the fighters and how happy you are with them, or otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, look, we made some sacrifices to live at the gym so that we could train under our usual environment and do the things that we normally do, have all our usual training partners. I've said on many interviews that's something that we weren't able to necessarily do with Alex and Dan, and I felt that those fights weren't our best fights. They were great fights, but they weren't our best fights, and we didn't want to take that chance again. So we locked this camp down and just ensured that we were able to operate, under our normal procedures and under our normal training environment. So we've done that. We've had the added bonus of just throwing that lockdown in. I think that was good for everybody to just change the monotony of what usually goes on. I think living in the gym was like a kind of healthy. It was refreshing. Yeah.
When I was growing up, the old boxers used to do that, the Muhammad Ali and.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think with today's, with these young guys today, there's just a lot. There's a lot of outside influence that's like always coming in on them from all angles, and to be able to remove that and isolate yourself and have nothing to do with any outside influences, I think is a good thing when it comes to this sort of sport.
Can we go through the fighters? Shane making a return to the cage after a big layoff. How happy are you with him?
Yeah, I mean, Shane's come back in really good nick. He's had a bit of time off, but before coming into this fight, he's been training and getting himself in pretty good shape, upskilling himself a little bit, and I'm happy. Like, you know, like the backstory to Shane, I don't know if I've shared it, but I was asked to go into, you know, they reached out, the surgeons reached out to me and asked to come. The surgeons and physios reach out to me and come to one of the meetings that involve Shane. When that happens, it means there's going to be some very bad news. So it was potentially career-ending news. We managed to avoid that by just Shane's determinations and the way his body works and a few other factors. We managed to avoid it being a career-ending injury, but it was close. And so for him to stage this comeback and get back into the sport and recover from that neck injury has been, it's been a godsend. It's been brilliant. So we're all very happy for Shane that he can get back and hopefully he can get the job done during this fight.
You said to me once he was one of the guys that you liked training the most because he was both challenging and talented.
Yeah, I mean, like, Shane is... What's challenging is he doesn't have some of the athletic gifts that a lot of the other UFC fighters have and a lot of the other guys in the gym. But he has, he has other qualities to make up for that, for not being as athletic as some of these guys. Shane is a guy that, for instance, never gets tired. His gas tank is one of the biggest in the gym. Right next to BJ Bland is definitely Shane Young. And so, like, why it's challenging and why it's fun is because I'm formulating a game plan around some of these factors that I don't normally have to with these other guys. So that's what I find fun about Shane. So, like, it's just slightly different game plan and the way I'm formulating it around way different qualities to what I'm used to. And that's why, I always find it really fascinating when I'm working with Shane.
Brad was hoping to be fighting earlier than this. He had a slight injury. Is everything ship-shape with him?
Yeah, I mean, Brad had a small minor knee injury, which he got over, which stopped him from fighting earlier when Dan was fighting around that time. But he's come back from that fine, and he's jumping in there now. The UFC are doing him no favours. I think they understand the quality of fighter he is, and they understand that he had a big background in combat sports before he got to the UFC, and they you couldn't get a harder test than the three guys that they're throwing him in with, including this guy. So he's getting thrown to the wolves early, but I mean, from what I know of Brad, getting thrown to the wolves early is an environment that he lives for. That's where he lives. He lives in that space he just lives in that uncomfortableness of being challenged by the best guys in the world. That's what he likes the most.
And Kai gets a top 10 opponent this time round.
Yeah, top 10, like a ranking below him. But what this essentially means for Kai after this is if Kai can win this, he can fight one of those. It's the gateway to fight one of the top guys, beat them, and then fight for the title. So, he's potentially 2 fights away from the title. We've been gracious to the UFC, and we've taken a fight with guys that are lower ranked with us. After you've done a couple of fights with lower ranked guys, it then becomes your turn to take one of the higher ranked guys on after you're successful. And that's where that's the position that Kai will be in, 2 fights away from a title shot, and so and that's our goal, that's our aim.
The boys are telling me how disciplined Kai is when he was living here at the gym. They've seen it. It would have been good for you to see your 4 fighters, well, the 10 that were here, and just see how different they are when you only see them at training times, just to when you see them 24 hours a day for that long.
Yeah, no, it was a massive learning curve for me and a massive learning curve for all of us. I got to see I got to see their habits outside of what I normally see, which is just inside these four walls. I try not to pry into their life too much outside of these four walls. So, yeah, I got to see some good things. I got to see some bad things, to be honest. Look, I think the important thing is that we like to take a really holistic approach. So, even though you are walking outside of the gym, everything you do in your life is to prepare you for, your next fight, your next workout, your next evolution in terms of what you're going to do for yourself to make yourself a better fighter. We were able to tweak a lot of things because I didn't necessarily like a lot of the stuff that I saw that was happening outside of the training environment. And we really paid attention to a lot of those things. Some of the guys, the way they were recovering, the way they were sleeping. We got into a lot of breathing exercises, a lot of stretching and rolling and trigger point stuff that we can do in between training rather than just lying around and just waiting for the next training. So it was good in that respect. We learned a lot about each other, and we're definitely better off because of it.
And of course the big one, Israel, long awaited by everybody in the world, this fight.
Yeah, I mean, Israel's looking good. Like, this is probably his most challenging fight in MMA, or could potentially be his most challenging fight. We have a very good opponent, a very credible opponent, another opponent who's never lost. No one's ever come up with a plan or with a blueprint to beat him. So that presents a lot of difficulties. It's hard to extrapolate things out of other people's blueprint when none of their blueprints have been successful. So that always causes a problem. But I mean, we've been working on this for a while now, and we're like we typically are, just quietly confident. But yeah. So we're happy with Israel's progress and where he is.